All right, what's happening, guys? So what I got up here, it's gonna be a little bit of a tough video. I got the AC running right here, right next to us, so hopefully it's not too loud. I'm gonna talk nice and loud so you can turn down your volume. But anyway, what I got right here is a depiction of a horn. So I've been playing with this program for a while now, and it's not easy to work with when it comes to horns. If you don't know what's going on, if you can't visualize it in your head, it can be really tricky. But once you do get it and you figure out how to kind of play with the sliders here, kind of like an equalizer, you can move and adjust things in just the right way, and you get to see exactly where your power levels are going to be at in reference to the amount of wattage applied to your subwoofer, whatever, so on, and the output total. But anyway, so I've been making horns for a while now. I've been using this program for a while, and it's finally starting to kind of click. And so I wanted to show you guys the whole deal with horns and even sixth orders. So the series sixth order in particular. Now parallel sixth order is a little bit different, and it doesn't really fall into some of the problems. I mean, they're still hard to build, but they're nowhere near as difficult as a horn or a series sixth order. And I'm going to show you why that is, or at least kind of give you an idea of what's going on, and at the very least show you how it looks if you get it right and if you don't. So, but anyway, right now what we're looking at, I'm really proud of this. You see this waveform right here? So this graph right here represents your frequency. So we'll see down here, this is 10 hertz, 20 hertz, 40 hertz, 60 hertz, and so on. And right now I dialed this particular enclosure. It's designed with the parameters of the Sundown 8-inch X, the V3. I have one of those right now, and I've been testing it. Did that 139 if you're up to date with my videos. But anyway, so we're using those parameters for that sub, and I've been manipulating. I've done a few horns. We'll go backwards and we'll check those out. But this one in particular is a series sixth order that I just started messing with last night. And like I said, I've been messing with this program for a while, and I could not get it dialed in. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just playing with the numbers. But now I'm kind of figuring it out. But like I said, if you see this bump right here, this is actually pretty dang flat for a series 6 to go from, this is a, let's say like 26 hertz all the way to about maybe 45. To have a peak like this is pretty dang nice. It's pretty hard to do in a series 6. Now you could take a series 6 and kind of stretch out the bandwidth, but like I said, it's really difficult. And you typically end up with huge peaks in the low end, and then a dip on the high end, and then another peak on the top end as well. And it's kind of the same thing you would get with the horn too. But anyway, so I wanted to show you what does this box model look like, and then I'll go over a little bit about this program that I'm using here, Hornresp. So it might be a little bit difficult to see on that screen, and I apologize. I don't have any fancy equipment or nothing. I can't do any screenshots and stuff like that, so we're just gonna have to kind of bear through it. So I'll try to point things out, see if I can maybe focus in a little bit. I'm having a hard time with my clamp and everything. So here we go, it's a little bit better. But down here is where one side of the speaker cone is. You can kind of see that little green circle there, and there's a red circle here. This would be the other side of your speaker. And like I said, it's kind of difficult to understand and visualize this setup. It kind of looks like a horn if you look at it, but it's actually a series sixth order. So when I drop this down here, bam, it goes right back to that standard box design, the standard series 6. So you have your high chamber, you have your low chamber. Typically you'd have your sub magnet back here facing the back. This would be your lower tuned chamber, so you'd have your port length depending on whatever. Tune this low, so in this situation. So we're saying about maybe 26 hertz, you know, whatever, 20 hertz in that range. And then your upper section would be tuned up higher in the 40 hertz range. And then just your other port here, usually this port is huge. Usually it's wide open and it has a very small length. So if you see some large builds, you'll typically see that front loading plate is what this area is, and then in the back you'll see some either a big long port or a bunch of arrow ports. This is typically what this would be. Now, if it was designed more like a horn, to where this isn't the center where the subwoofer would meet up, so that's what this offset does. It basically shows that it's an offset at a different point. But this is what that low chamber basically is. This long tubing here extends a little bit out, and then it meets up with the larger chamber, and then you have that chamber size, and then here's that front port, and you can see how it actually represents that kind of smaller, shorter, larger, wider mouth. And where this would normally be a chamber as well, but because of this design and because of the speaker parameters, it literally calls for such, it's almost like a T-line, and actually it's pretty much what it is a T-line. But that's what it would take to actually get that low frequency channel to push through just right through that upper chamber and actually resonate with the upper chamber at just the right point in time. But anyway, so we'll take this back, and then what I want you guys to see, I'm going to try to move some of this stuff in real time to kind of give you an idea of what moves around. It's pretty hard to do this unless, like I say, you've had some time with it. I mean, I've been on this for years, like since 2012, and I'm still learning how to really do this. So, and I spent a lot of time on it. But anyway, so this is our lower chamber, overall displacement, overall volume actually in liters. So I'm gonna try to remember this number 589, because the thing is with these Series 6 and horns is it a tiny little bit of a change, a small change can make a huge difference in the way the efficiency of the power is transferred, and those SPL curves, the bandwidth, just things start moving around very quickly if there's a small change. So that's what makes these enclosures so difficult. I mean, you could, the thing here is that the smaller the sub is, the smaller the diaphragm, and the higher the motor force, the more difficult it is. But if you have a large cone, like a huge, like a 15 or 18, and you don't have so much motor force, then you can actually get away with a lot more of the parameters. You can get away with having them not so perfect, I guess. So I'll try to remember this 589. Let's see, and I'm gonna drop it down. Oh, I'm sorry. So this is actually the large chamber. Let's see. That would be for the port. That's right, chamber 1. So we go to switch to chamber 2. So this is the lower tune chamber. So this one, if you manipulate it just a little bit, it has a huge effect. I mean, the same thing too with the upper chamber and the port, but it's all tied together. So, but let's see. Right now, our total chamber volume, the lower chamber side is tiny, guys. 8 liters, 8.7 liters. That's small. I mean, you could visualize basically four 2-liter bottles worth of airspace, but it's arranged in a T-line kind of format. If you've seen my PVC pipe setup, that'll kind of help you understand. Okay, well, yeah, I see it now. So that's like 8 liters worth, 9 liters worth of T-line. So that number should be easier for me to remember. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch back to the power mode, and so you'll see as I adjust that chamber volume how much of a difference it plays on your overall output. So let's drop it down, see what happens. See, it's starting to shift already. So now we're at 5.7 liters, and already it's starting to kind of put a dip, put those peaks up there, those cat ears. Drop it down to a smaller volume. And of course, that means it's tiny. That means that rear chamber is really small. Look, 2 liters, 3 liters. We still got some good peak in the lower frequency and the higher range, but we're getting a huge dip down here. So let's do the opposite. So let's increase the size of that guy here in a minute. I'll show you the schematic again. So now that you see that chamber got real thin, we'll go back, we'll increase this. So our good number was at 8.7 liters. We're back. So I'm going to raise that size up. So now we're going to make it real big. A lot of people want to make that rear chamber real big, thinking that, oh, it's going to get tuned lower and whatever. But that's not the case. So now we're at 26, 27. We'll go to 30 liters. And now look at this. Now look at those humps. Yeah, we got a little bit lower of a tune. We're maybe at 22 hertz. But that's a steep peak. So anything outside of that 22 hertz on the dot, it starts to move 23, 24, 25. It dips deep down bad. Like you're losing, several dB. This right here is about 110 dB, and this represents only a few watts. So it's measuring at 2.8 volts, or roughly 3 watts. I don't remember exactly. I think it's actually 1 watt, but very, very low power. But that's not really important. We can plug in the power numbers, and then it'll actually show you based on that. But you start off basically with low power, and then you would turn that power up. But anyway, you'll still get basically the same curve. But anyway, so we increased that volume. Let's check it out real quick. See, so it's a little bit fatter of a pipe now. Still the same length. You can adjust the length, and it actually will have an effect on the tuning as well. Let's go back to the power. So let's increase the size of that significantly. Let's go up to 80. Now you see how, yeah, you still got that low tune. I mean, we dropped down below 20 hertz. Now we're probably at 18 hertz, the infamous 18 hertz. Super huge dip right here. Another peak, another dip, a peak, and then it falls off pretty much. And you probably won't ever play anything above that, but you would get a lot of resonant frequencies. That's what this is showing up here. Usually this is masked off. You don't even, because I mean most people cross over at this point anyway, so we're pretty much just looking at this section. But this is what it looks like when you oversize that rear chamber. Let's bring this back to where we were at. So like I said, this is very sensitive. Just a couple of liters between, let's say 12. We got a bunch of dips. Not too bad. I mean, better than nothing. If you made a couple of mistakes and it's too big, too small by a little bit, you get that hump again. Not too bad. I mean, but get it just right and it's pretty good. And I'm sure if you really, add in some dampening, and you could do some other stuff, and you can get a much flatter bandwidth. And there's actually, like this, I'm designing this specifically for peak SPL with a decent bandwidth, not necessarily a solid peak, because I do believe I have a few in here that are specifically just for a straight peak. So you'll gain everything. As much power goes right into just that one value, but everything else is pretty much shit. So let's change the front volume now. See what that does. So this is our front volume, and this is a huge chamber, right? So compared to 8 liters worth of rear chamber, all arranged in like a T-line, going back into your upper chamber, which is huge, 588 liters. I don't know the conversion for that off the top of my head. I think it's like 80 liters per cubic foot, or I don't know. I used to have it, but I always forget. But you can go into your calculator, do the exchange. My guess would be somewhere around maybe 4 cubes. It's probably bigger than that by a lot, but maybe I'll get the numbers. I'll post them up on the comments or something. But so let's reduce the size of this chamber, see what happens. I'll do it slowly, see what we get. So not much happening yet. And so that's one thing about a 6th order, is that you can get away with a much smaller chamber. and still have pretty good response. But to get that perfect perfect number, it has to be as either big as it needs to be, or it just needs to be just right. So now we're starting to get to where we're actually dropping down and losing some of that full potential. But I mean, that's a pretty big trade-off. Like, instead of having such a huge chamber, you could shrink that chamber down to something usable. I mean, you can actually put in your car now, and you don't lose that much output. Your peaks and valleys aren't too bad. So let's take a look at the model again. So you can see now it's a much smaller chamber, and actually the chamber smaller than the port. So normally you wouldn't do that. You would probably want to tune this port up, but that has another effect. We'll see that here in a minute. But let's keep shrinking down that first chamber here. Let's just drop it down significantly, see what kind of things happen here. So there we go. 120 liters. So 120 liters is about 1/4 the size that they used to be, and now we're starting to lose quite a bit up in the upper range. I mean, obviously, because that larger chamber is tuned higher, and it's intended to really fill in that upper range gap. Your lower end is still up there, not too bad, but it's going to be extremely peaky in that lower end. Let's look at what it looks like. So yeah, so it pretty much just looks like a bunch of pipes piled together. And like I said, we can adjust that port. Let's do that right now real quick, since we have this value going. I believe it's this guy right here, 2443. I got to remember these numbers so I can put them back. So that port is gigantic. So let's do that. So what this usually does is it increases the load overall, but that also increases compression, which will mean you get a little bit, it'll get a little bit louder, but it could chop off quite a bit of that bandwidth. So let's see. So I'll raise it back up. It was way up in the 2044 something. So it was around there somewhere. So we drop it down. See, it's starting to compress a little bit more on the upper range. As it gets smaller, that port gets smaller, it's starting to choke off that a little bit more, give it a little more compression. It's bringing back this guy up here. It's kind of tapering this side off, so let's shrink it down some more. Now it's getting pretty small, and as you can see, it's starting to choke it out, but it's increasing the valley here, but it's increasing the peaks here and here. Let's take a look at it. This is the hard part about the horn response. If you use it this way like I am, you don't do the math, you don't do any of the fancy stuff, you don't actually know what you're doing. You're just moving sliders around like it's a mixer, like it's an equalizer, then you just kind of get what you get. But I've seen boxes built something like this, and they're pretty good about their peaks. So you would want to, you know, if you needed a small space, kind of a setup for SPL, this is kind of a go-to. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. So like I said, it's tuned pretty low still. We're getting 22 hertz, and it's up there in the decibels. But look at this valley. So like I said, good for SPL, not so good for, you know, everyday blasting and being efficient. So let's bring it down some more until we get some. Now it's starting to drop off. Now it's way too small. But as you can see, if you really wanted to use it, even though it was that small, for really low tuning, you could. It would just be very specific. So right at like 18 hertz, bam, you would have a major peak. But at 17.8 hertz, it starts to drop off drastically. So let's I mean, I could play with the port length, and that should just lower the tune. I'll show you what that looks like real quick. And I apologize about this being a long video. I'm trying my best to kind of just give you the rundown as quick as possible, but I don't have any choices right now, and I really wanted to just get this info out there to whoever wants to see it. So port length, of course, you know, when the port's longer, it gives more loading, it restricts more. So when you do that, so no port length, tune goes up. Start increasing the length of that port, and immediately your tune drops, but also your overall power drops. So let's increase the port size. Same difference, right? Just having a little bit of fun here to show you guys. So let me bring some of these numbers back. Hopefully I can remember right around where they were at. This was like a 240 something. And if not, I could always just clear it out and do it again. This was way up in the 500s. Now, I don't really intend to build the box based on these numbers, especially if it's impractical for whatever use I'm going to use it in, like in the sedan, you know, the RX. It probably won't even fit. But it's good to know what does, you know, what small changes here do, what small changes there. So even here, as you can see on the ideal lengths and volumes, if I adjust that front loading port length a little bit, we get some major differences. So you guys remember this is the value for that port length up here. So you can see it's almost disappeared. It's a tiny short little port length. That's your loading wall. So if you wanted to increase that usually you'll see guys put you know, large 6-inch PVC pipe half tubes, you know, to smooth out, round out that area. That helps out a lot. Or they'll just add in a bunch of blocks of 2x4s. That's that section right there. So typically it would be pretty short around here, but if you increase the length, this is what it does. So on an ideally set up rear and front chamber, shorten up the ports. It just if it's too short, you lose some. You see, if it's too short, get that Goldilocks zone where I would like it just right. That front port is always the easiest to tune, so remember that's gold right there, guys. If you mess something up, always keep that front port to where you can at least adjust it. Alright, so if it's too long, remember it chokes things out, but it does lower the tuning, but you also lose output. Just like you see right here, tune got lower, output got reduced, especially in the upper range. Try to bring it back to the Goldilocks zone here, where it was at. Alright, roughly, you know, close enough. So let's see, chamber 2. There's not really much more that I can adjust on the chamber 2 that will give you any updates. So you want to have that rear chamber. If you have a very weak sub or a very large diameter sub, so like let's say a 12, 15, 18, 24, that's a lot of cone area, and it's gonna struggle to fight against a small chamber. Same thing, it's basically your ratio of motor force to cone area. But if you have a small sub, like I said, like an 8-inch, you want a really small rear chamber, but you want to have a long port length. That's going to load that sub down in the lower frequencies, and that's where all your power is going to come from. It's going to couple it properly. Now, unless you wanted to build something that was efficient, where you wanted to save on power, you can increase your box rise by increasing that size volume right there on the rear chamber. But that's a topic for another video. Like I said, I don't have too much time to, I mean, I can go on all day long. Like I said, I've been doing this since 2012, and I'm still just barely getting there. So I'm going to cancel this out and see if we can go back to some other builds. Let me see what this one is. I don't even remember what this is. I think it's the same thing. 4th order horn. Ah, this is hey, don't look at this. Don't wait, stop. Skip this. This is gold right here. So I'm gonna throw it out there. If you made it to this part, you know, this length of the video, thanks guys for watching. I appreciate it. Hopefully you didn't skip too much. But so this right here, in my opinion, is probably the most ideal horn shape. Now you can see it literally, I mean, it looks like a kind of like a fancy wine glass or whatever. This would be your diaphragm here. This is, since it's a fourth order, this rear chamber is closed off, it's sealed. And then this is your port or your horn. This area right here is your compression area, and here's your first segment of the flare, and then the remainder flare. So from the math on this subwoofer, this is what I got as an ideal horn shape for peak SPL. And it kind of looks like a trumpet, go figure, right? So let's see. I gotta allow editing. Hopefully I don't screw it up. Alright, so let's look at the power on this one. Wow, check that out. So, in this case, in this scenario, it's tuned really high. I mean, I could tune it lower. I would just have to stretch out some of these numbers, and it would be the same pretty much horn shape. It would just be a lot longer. So think of like the difference between like a really small little cornet horn, those little tiny ones, the shorties, versus like a tuba. You know, it pretty much the same thing. It just has the same overall exponential flare and so on and so on. But this one in particular allowed me to get that nice bump like this in a high tune range. So if I wanted to SPL the crap out of this sub, this is what you would want to see. So if with this one, like I said, it's extremely sensitive. So if anything changes at all, there's an immediate response, especially in this section right here. The ratio of this compression zone and this flare and this little gap right here is so critical. If you miss by just a few, I guess what would be in your area, you lose a lot. So let's check that out. Let me try to remember which one was that measurement. I believe it's the S2. So you see the S2, the area is 13. I believe that's square centimeters. I know, sorry about the metric stuff, but I can't dictate any of that. You guys have to do the conversions yourself. Let's see. We'll go from we'll go smaller and see what it does. So obviously if you go too small, it's going to choke it out. There's not going to be anything coming out of that port at all. I mean, 2 square centimeters, that's nothing. So you obviously probably won't go too small, but we're at 13 square again. If we go just a little bit bigger, look at that dip. We went from 13 to 30. 61. A lot of people want to make things wide open, so there's more airflow, but that's not what you want to do. You don't want to do that. It's a compression zone for a reason. And if it's too wide, let's go look back at the schematic. So there we go. So now it opened up. That was this point right here. It opened up, and this looks like the ideal shape for a horn, right? But it has its trade-offs. And that's it right there, a little dip. Where initially we had a good round over, now we have 2 peaks again. Which, I mean, it's not significant, it's not gonna kill you, people won't even notice it. But when you're going to the competitions, when you're really, every single watt counts and whatever, then this is gonna be a thing. And like I said, this is more to understand what every little change does. So let's bring this back down to 13. Whoa, almost very fast. 11, 12, 13. All right. Let's check out our compression area. That's this section right here. So at 342, let's raise it up a lot. So now it's big. Let's see what it does. Whoa, big difference, right? So a huge compression area, it took away from this curve and it brought it down to this. So as you can see, I mean, it makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense that when that compression area is huge in relation to that diaphragm, it's going to be low tuned. A lot of pressure is going to develop in the low frequencies, and that's exactly what you're seeing here. So once again, you could get away with this if that's exactly what you needed and that's what you wanted. There you go. Now you got SPL in that one tiny frequency. Got a little bit of a valley here, well, a lot of bit of a valley, up to another peak, and then so on. All that from a small change. Well, I mean, that's a pretty big change, but not too many people would see that in the design. I mean, not too many people design horns anyway, but if you're gonna make your first attempt just for fun, this gives you an idea of the small changes. Like I said, let's make that compression zone a little bit too small and see what it does. I already forgot. Okay, so it's right around 344. So let's make it tiny. 50. So that's still pretty big if you ask me, but let's see. Okay, so that's what it looks like now. It's actually smaller than the diaphragm, but there are cases where you can make that work. So it's too small now, and typically I see too small of a compression chamber in most builds, and so that you end up with that same valley again. Ultra high peak, and then still in the tuning range, but it lost a lot of power. And then once again, like I see, you're getting a big dip here up until the next fundamental frequency, that peak there. So it's I'll go down a little bit smaller so you can see. Shake off my hand a little bit, it's going numb. If you're still with me on this, guys, I appreciate you hanging out. It's my first long video. This stuff is not easy for me to do, guys. Like, it's just not easy. I don't know how to explain it, but my situation is no bueno, and I gotta just put the camera up and just go. So pretty much that's no compression area at all. If we take a look, none at all. It's gone. You would probably lose a lot more than this, but it's just a simulation, guys. It's not going to be perfect, but it, just like a calculator, it should get you closer. So like I said, I'll play with these kind of values and just watch that curve move until I feel like, okay, I think it's as far as I can get it, or at least that's as far as I can bear, because sometimes it gets exhausting. So let's look back at the schematic again. So you can play with a lot of these different variables here. The overall length. So the longer this goes, the lower your tune will be, but you might have to manipulate some of those flare lengths, some of the values here of the size of that flare. Typically, if you go bigger and a wider flare, you'll gain some bandwidth. You could also gain a little more power. In this case, because it's a fourth order, I did mess around with this sealed area, and you can go extremely large and it basically does nothing. What happens is you want to be able to actually make it as small as you can before it starts to lower your output, but making it any bigger, it doesn't really help it that much. So that tells you something like a sealed box by itself, it doesn't really assist a high power driver that much. I mean, some people are probably going to freak out and their mouths are wide open right now because I said that, but that's an argument for, like I said, another video, and that's kind of a tough one. Sealed boxes have their place, and I'm not saying that they're bad or nothing, but they do what they do. Let's try that out. Chamber. Never remember which value does what. I believe it's this guy right here. Yeah, there we go. So let's make that pretty big. Let's see what it does power wise. You see, it didn't really change much. I made that box significantly bigger. It was like one point something liters, and yeah, and it was actually performing better than having a giant box. So you make it as big as you want, and it's not doing nothing. It's not really loading the sub that much, so it's not assisting until it matches that cone and that pressure overall. So here's the sealed box being way too small, so it's obviously having a major effect on it. Half a liter's worth of volume, and now it's starting to bring it back up, which that's a tiny box. I don't even know if you can physically fit it inside half a liter. Let's say 1 liter. So yeah, I mean, you might be able to get a box that's 1 liter. So we're back to that 1.6 liters. So that seems doable. That's a tiny box. All right, I'm gonna keep going, guys. Hopefully you're still sticking around. I might go for another 20 minutes if I can, if my hand will let me. Getting that mouse hand is killing me. But I have a couple horns that I'd like to show you guys if you're gonna stick around. Maybe this is your time to grab some popcorn or something to drink, whatever. Pause the video. I don't want you to miss anything good. So let's go back. I don't remember what I got going on, so let's see what this is. So this is kind of mimicking pretty much a T-line with a little bit of a compression area. So basically, like if you were to take some PVC pipe and stick it in a box, the smallest box that you need, kind of like what I did with my one video with the 139 dB. Let's take a look at this box, the parameters on this one. Power level. Bam, there we go. So, T-line. T-line, T-line, T-line. Very typical. You see this curve? Very typical of a T-line design. You'll have 2 major peaks. One in the higher fundamental frequency and one at the tuning. Or sometimes well, yeah, pretty much. And when I built this one, I want to say all I did was just try to optimize this lower peak as high as I can get it to go. So you adjust your lengths, you adjust your volume, you adjust your compression area as much as you can to get that one peak. And you can adjust the T-line for bandwidth, but you'll still almost always have these kind of peaks. So let's do the same thing we did to the other ones. So let's manipulate chamber volume. So this top one, it manipulates the chamber volume, and the second one just manipulates the length. The volume stays the same, so it's not really affecting the actual volume. It's just kind of giving you a display of the length. At least I think that's what it is. It should be. Based on the numbers, that's what it should be. But if anybody knows how to use horn response better than me, go ahead and chime in and feel free to let me know. That'd be great. But let's see what that does if we increase the compression. So like I said, this has no response. It does nothing because it's not really changing the chamber volume. So we can leave that there. But this guy, I increased that chamber volume, and look what it did to our curve. It lengthened the curve a little bit, but it reduced the power significantly, and it lowered the tune. So big chamber, which, like I said, most people overdo their chamber size. And once again, it's not a bad thing. Sometimes that can increase your efficiency. That will increase your box rise. But sometimes that will make your speaker, if it's a high-powered speaker, it basically makes it useless, because you're no longer able to use that high power before you hit X max. So let's, in this case of a T-line, if the chamber is too small, it doesn't really affect it, because I mean you wouldn't build it smaller than your pipe tubing anyway. So there's kind of a minimum size. So that's what's happening here. So, see what I'm saying? Like, that's probably never gonna happen in real life. I mean, it could. There is a way to do that, but like I said, most people wouldn't do it anyway, and you wouldn't really need to do it. But trying to find just that right chamber size for power, like I said, all I did here was just kind of move this around. You can see how much that jumps around before it kind of just gives you the best of what you can get. So I keep adjusting that chamber size until I start to see that peak going down. See what I'm saying? We don't want it to. We don't want to lose any power output. All right. Shake off the hand real quick, guys. I'm going numb. If you're still here with me, I appreciate it. I know it's a long one. I'm trying to get this out as fast as I can without making too many mistakes. 42 minutes, wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. I'm gonna keep going though. So hopefully you guys got something to drink. Hopefully you're able to relax and actually enjoy this. But let's see, what should I mess with next? So yeah, in this case, all you really have to manipulate is the port length and the port area. So if I decrease that port area, this is what happens. We end up with some. Well, that's not the power. That's the power. So if your port area, so let's say you go from like a 4-inch PVC pipe tube, whatever, down to like a 3-inch or a 2-inch. Making it smaller, not that one. Not that one, this one. Making that tube a smaller diameter. That's what ends up happening. Too small, it's choking it out. It's gonna be tuned low. You'll get to hear 18 hertz, but you won't get any volume. Increase that pipe size, the overall area, so going from back to a 2-inch to a 3-inch. Let's exaggerate this a little bit more. Getting that big peak again. Let's keep going. Is there any diminishing returns if we go to like an 8-inch pipe, 10-inch pipe? What are the limits? Shoo, you can go to a huge pipe, right? And it's still giving us something, but this is not practical anymore. There we go. Now we're getting some loss. I mean, that's significant loss, but the size of that pipe is ridiculous. Let's check out the schematic just for fun. I mean, yeah. In that case, you could put a 15 in there and, you know. But anyway, so you want to couple this up to something that's practical. So it doesn't need to be a 6-inch pipe. It might not even need to be a 4. A 3 might have enough. In the case of a T-line, or so like the width of your box. So if you've seen some of those labyrinth style, You don't need to have those ports so dang big, guys. You don't need to have 6-inch spaces in between those ports. You can go, like I said, we want to go by the area, you know, maybe 16 square inches. That's what, a 4-inch pipe, maybe 3-inch pipe, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit smaller, depending on what you're running. This is for an 8-inch subwoofer, a high-powered 8-inch subwoofer. All right, so let's get out of the T-line. Let's see what else we got. Looks like I got a couple more minutes of recording time available, so we'll keep going, guys. I'm at 45 minutes right now. We'll go to 53-ish, and then we'll call it. So I have no idea what this is. Let's just check it out anyway. I think it's the same thing. Oh no, wait, what is this? Let me edit this. All right. So this would be your standard base reflex ported box. Kind of stuff you would get prefab or maybe even custom built. Look at that. Nice normal curve. We're back to the normal stuff, guys. But you can see the output already. We're barely, even though this is a huge peak, a little bit above 95 dB. I mean, compared to the other ones, which are already, you know, past 105 for sure, 110 almost. But that shows you the difference. The base reflexes, they have a limit. So I'll hopefully get into that kind of stuff a little bit later. But I just wanted to show you once again what these parameters do. So I want to say that I spent some time on this and tried to optimize for that specific speaker and that specific speaker's parameters, the overall chamber volume and the port volume and length, to get the most low frequency peak SPL. And that's probably why it looks like this right here. So once again, we'll go and just kind of manipulate some of those sizes, volumes, so you can see in real time exactly what's happening. This should be our chamber size. So 110 is what we're at. Let's max it out so you can see. So right now it's increasing that chamber volume. It doesn't look like it on the picture, but like I said, if I go like that, then it kind of gives you the illusion that it is, but it really isn't. This is just increasing the picture size. So. But this is the actual volume. So this is a tiny box. As you can see, that chamber is tiny, so it's the same size as the port now. So let's check that out, see what that did just for fun, and then I'll increase it here in a minute. So yeah, obviously, so now it's a teeny tiny T-line basically, and it's tuned way up in the 100 frequency. So yeah, that makes sense, right? I hope. It's basically a short T-line. Now let's increase that box volume. And as you can see, we're getting back to almost where we used to be at. I think it goes at 111. You can see small differences make large changes. Let's make that box huge. You see what it does? You guys should know, okay, well, yeah, if the box is too big, well, it's going to be tuned really low, right? Well, yeah, kind of, sort of. You can see what it's doing here in this case with that port. It is tuning lower, but we're losing a lot of power as well, so it's almost pointless to even do, but it can be done. And once again, just to show you what it does, we'll go take this back to that 111, and then now let's manipulate the port length. Got 4 more minutes, you can do it. My hand is buzzing. It's numb. So at 170 right now. So let's make this port stupid big. Because sometimes that happens, guys. I've seen people put in, like, you know, 10-inch ports, and you're like, good God, for 212s, and it's like, what happened? But anyway, so yeah, the port's too big. The tuning goes back up significantly. And in this case, it's actually still not bad. I mean, it'd be a pretty good SPL, you know, upper 50s if you really wanted to. Let's reduce that size, the volume of that port significantly. It's way too small now, but hey, guess what? It's tuned 12 hertz. You might actually get a little bit of output there, but nothing that would be significant that you would even really notice. 18 hertz, 20 hertz, because the port is too small. Well, let's increase that volume back. Let's bring it back. I can't feel my hand right now. It's completely numb. So this is really tough. Alright, so it's back. Let me find out where that port length is. Whew. 2630. So there we go. So let's adjust that port length. 2630 is where we were at. Alright, so now we got a longer port. And most of you guys already know, okay, well, yeah, that should lower the tuning, and that's exactly what it's doing, lowering the tuning. But because it's a smaller, small port area, it's also dropping off on some of that overall volume. Let's increase that port area, make it a little bit wider, a bigger tube. Brings that volume right back, but it also brings the tuning right back up. But we gain some power. And I want you guys to notice this little part right here. That's a peak. What's happening is because that port now is so big that it actually starts to become a resonator up in the higher fundamental frequencies. So that's what this little peak is here. This little notch. That could have some effect for some people. You might hear some boominess or some kind of clanky high frequency sounds. It will be really annoying. So just so you guys know, the port's too big. You might need some dampening. Let's see what else do I got. Keep making, let's make that port really long. Let's try to, we're basically making a T-line at this point because the port is so long. Increase the port area, so let's say it's like a long 4-inch pipe. So there we go, T-line again now, right? Increase the length even more because I want to get that 18 hertz, guys. It's a T-line again. Look at those peaks. Look at all these fundamental frequencies. Let's check it out. Hey, what do you know? T-line. But now you kind of have an idea of what that does. Bring it back down to a regular ported box, so we'll decrease that overall port area, decrease that length. We don't want a big old 6-foot long port. We just want a nice little 30-inch port, something I could build in the garage, right? 49 seconds left, guys. I'm about to close it out here. I might continue on with another. I know I have some more horns loaded up here. If not, I know for sure that I'm gonna be still on this quite a bit until I get that perfect, those perfect numbers. With those speakers specifically, the Sundown right now. I got the Sundown X8 V3. Haven't blown it out yet, so I'm gonna still keep chasing that 140 at between 20 and 22 hertz. But wish me luck, guys, and thanks for sticking around if you stayed for the whole video. Check out my speaker science playlist, and yeah, have a good day.